Bus Driving Adventures, by Boxy SUV, copyright Boxy SUV, 2024, all rights reserved. Disclaimer: the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this memoir are my own and based on my personal experiences. The events and circumstances described are truthful to the best of my recollection, but certain names, identifying details, and locations have been altered or omitted to respect the privacy of individuals and organizations. This memoir is not intended to defame, disparage, or harm the reputation of any person, company, or institution mentioned, whether directly or indirectly. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The content shared is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered a reflection of any official policies or viewpoints of any entities referenced. Preface: for my mom, the most important woman in my life, no one will replace. I miss you every day. I never became a doctor to heal you, or a lawyer to make sure you never lacked anything materially. But I was there for you, and did the best I could to make you proud. I kept my community safe long after you left, but all good things come to an end. Onward, I've been fortunate enough to drive many different transit models and school buses, and manufacturer names redacted. I've tried to stay away from conventional school buses as I dislike the tail swing. Boxy commercial vehicles are best for leading lines and pivot points. As far as transit and charter buses are concerned, I've been fortunate enough to drive many different manufactured bus types. Bus driving has been more an adventure than a source of income. Chapter 1. After a long year of waiting for the state hiring freeze to end, my hopes of being a correctional officer vanished. I can remember the many job applications I put out, without success. My background was in technology, multimedia, web development and software. After visiting a job fair, I was presented with a flyer for free bus driver training. Bus driving seemed beneath me. It felt beneath me in terms of pay and type of work. I can remember a cold wet October day, gloomy and solemn as I walked to the school bus driver training cattle call. School bus driver training. Our class was a full house, some even stood or sat. If a chair was available, outside the classroom. Thankfully the weather was much cooler, and all those people in one room were tolerable. It was disclosed to us that not all of us would make the cut. Only the dedicated would pass all the training and testing we would undergo to get our CDL Class B Special Driver Certificate. Unlike truck drivers, we would require extra training to carry precious human cargo. This training included daily inspections, defensive driving skills, school bus operation, first aid, school district policies, pupil management, rules of the road, and managing not only one's own mental and emotional state, but that of others. When you're on the road in the field, you're largely on your own. Sure, you can call dispatch, but that's not going to keep you out of trouble, so good training is the key to avoiding accidents. Good habits make good drivers. Educated drivers govern emotion, learning all the road signs, symbols, colors used for signage: green, directional; black, white, regulatory; black and yellow, warning; orange, road work; and blue and white, informational. All provided me a learning experience that gave me the capability to be a better driver. That training alone was worth over 100 hours I spent learning. Only 90 hours were required at the time. After 2 weeks, the class began to thin out as people realized although this was paid training, it was a commitment some could not make long term. The thought of being held to a higher standard was more than some could stomach. Initially, the thought of me driving a transit bus was kinda scary. Our instructor made it easy to grasp concepts. He was patient with our many questions. As winter set in, we had many quizzes, tests, and a final. Most, I could tell, didn't take notes or study. Some, distracted by family commitments or the need to make money, found an excuse to not follow through to the end. I'll admit, managing all that information was challenging. All the handouts, quizzes, training videos, and safety training were truly impressive. The skill set I learned there served me well in the years to come. After passing the class final and testing for the CDL test at the DMV, we began the next phase of training, identifying and locating all the components found on a bus. Each item has a name and a purpose. Each light or signal has a legal meaning to other drivers. After all, school buses are the only vehicles equipped with a stop sign. Proper terminology would help us when we test on paper and behind the wheel at the CHP someday for our special driver certificate required for operation of a school bus, daily pre-trip inspection. Learning and rehearsing what to say and why you say it, as the CHP tests are timed, was grueling but critical. At this point out of a class of nearly 40 students. Our class now numbered in the very low 20s. Some missed too many days of training, and couldn't catch up. Some didn't pass the last class and had to join our class late. New faces and new trainers cycled in and out, each with a slightly unique style. The air brake test, while part of the pre-trip inspection, was difficult for some as it required not only memorization, vocalization, but hand-eye coordination. Again, a critical learning process takes time, but pays dividends. What I learned, while being inundated with information can be overwhelming at times, learning the rules of the road can not only save your life, but that of others. Chapter 2, Behind the Wheel Training. Finally, we got to drive the bus. All of our training was coming into play. Layering our training now just got real. The reality of driving a 26,000-pound transit school bus that could seat 85 children, was getting very real, very fast. We began with basic exercises like driving the bus along lines or curbs. Backing up straight, inline backing, along or backing around a curb highlighted the need for proper mirror settings for each driver before driving. The general guidance was to adjust the mirrors having about an inch of the bus in view, rear wheels touching the ground and about 200 feet of road behind the vehicle. That's why the pre-trip is so important. Daily vehicle inspection reports build good habits, making sure that all components in and outside the bus are checked and adjusted prior to operation. Post-trip inspection is also important. I can't count how many times drivers forgot the master shutoff switch, or to drain the dual air tanks after each shift only to start the day with a dead battery, or some other issue causing them to fall behind schedule. As expected, we began driving in a parking lot, getting a feel for performing all the steps from beginning to end for the pre-trip inspection, air brake test, and getting a feel for how the bus responded. Commercial transit buses can't stop on a dime, and therefore we must learn to drive defensively about 90% of the time. Being aware of our surroundings was also very important. Children are small and easy to miss. Children are careless and playful. It is easy to miss them if you're not observant of your surroundings and keep track of your passengers, both big or small. Surroundings aren't always clear: bushes, trees, cars, turning a corner, bicycles, skateboards, all can end a school bus driver's career. What's abundantly clear is how heated and public accidents can get. Drivers usually take the blame, even when they don't deserve it. Personal vehicle motorists, bicycles, skateboards, scooters, are all more nimble than a bus, and that's why it's generally upon the driver to make sure he or she understands that all accidents are preventable. While there may be some debate on this, drivers should make every effort to control speed, following distance, regularly scanning the road for hazards both near and far. Reaction time and stopping distance in a commercial vehicle weighing 26,000 pounds being what it is, it all adds up to defensive driving on the part of the bus operator. Previously we practiced using cones and lines, backing around corners, straight line backing, student crossings, pupil management, use of the stop sign, operation of warning lights, emergency lights, analog trip meter, measuring speed and mileage, and so on. Now we finally got out on the open road to train, as usual escorted by our instructor. We practiced on incline, decline, around corners, in traffic, parallel parking, identifying signage as we drove, reacting to simulated scenarios, railroad crossings, fueling, logging time, mileage, and pupil count. It's all a blur sometimes the amount of work we had to do, but it was all just preparation for a career of challenges and responsibility. The day was soon approaching to test at the local CHP office. Our class had really thinned out to about 15 or so finalists. Months of time training, trials, studying, learning, and driving was coming down to this final test for our special driver certificate at the CHP. The test itself is rotated, generally there are 4 tests, and questions can vary from a pool of information not only included in the commercial CDL handbook, but school bus operation as well. I studied for this test like my life, and those of my passengers depended on it, because it did. I passed on the first try. Success is usually a trailing indicator of hard work. At last, I became a licensed commercial driver with a special driver certificate. It was a proud day for me, as the weather was improving and so was my self-esteem. We were informed that our driving record will be regularly monitored via DMV pull notices. As if we didn't already have enough pressure on us, we had another reminder. As a child I liked playing with my toy cars, remembering pivot points of the rear tire, counting cars as they drove by while I stood on the rusty balcony of our apartment. I spent hours watching cars go by on our busy boulevard, quickly identifying make and model as they drove by. I had my favorites, which I would like to own someday. I never thought I'd be driving a commercial transit school bus. But here I was, license in hand, waiting for an assignment. Coming from a desk job in a previous career, a changing landscape was a refreshing view. As my safety manager said to me, "We did our best to train you before we let you loose with the wolves. It's your responsibility to be safe and fend for yourself. We'll be around if you have questions." Getting my first route. Getting my first route was a real experience. Most drivers wanted local routes, so they could be near the yard. Socialize, go home and eat lunch, who knows? Personally, I didn't care much for the town I worked in. It's a busy town, with lots of sketchy areas and impatient drivers. I wasn't from the area as I drove 19 miles each way every day. So when a route in the redacted town came up for a redacted unified school district contract, I jumped at the chance. All those deadhead miles might fatten my paycheck and I'd be driving in a nice neighborhood with courteous drivers. Why not? I grabbed it. Little did I know why no one wanted the route. The route bus, unlike the others belonging to the school district, was an old and mechanically challenged model and as filthy as you can get. That may have been a contributing factor as to why drivers with more seniority snatched up routes with newer buses. Now I know, wow, I won't lie, when I first laid eyes on that old model transit bus, it was like a time warp of bad engineering and poor maintenance. After all this training and hard work, I was disgusted at the equipment I was provided and the standards I needed to meet. The divide was significant. I almost backed out. The old model bus controls differed greatly from the newer buses we trained on, and I requested a dry run training session to help me understand what the many unlabeled buttons and switches actually did. It was mechanically challenged, but that was the route bus. So I held my nose and dove in, grime and all, as it had been sitting for almost a year, another red flag. The shine of this new job was wearing off fast. It was blood and guts time. So I took it upon myself to go to the dollar store and pick up some supplies. It was the beginning of a long concerted effort to restore a mechanically challenged bus to its former glory. LOL, what I learned, determination pays off, even if only a little at a time. Chapter 3, I bought a 5-gallon bucket, paper towels, shop towels, soap, glass cleaner, tools for loose seats and a degreaser. I started with the inside of the bus and worked my way out. Inside the bus was a thick film of dust and grime. I began with the driver compartment, working my way out in the early morning the day before my route. I just felt guilty driving around passengers in such a filthy bus. I worked several hours removing the grime around the controls, gauges, and floor before moving on to the seat and seat backs. I would be putting my hands on every day to check for loose seats, and there were a few. Tools and cleaner in hand, I worked hard to remove the junkyard musk from this aging relic. I finally got to the outside of the bus and managed to get a hose of water to work with pliers, as someone had removed the wing nut on the faucet. I was never a Boy Scout, but being prepared came in handy. I managed to find a small step ladder in the yard. The step ladder helped me give the old bus a much-needed sponge bath. Windows took the longest, as the filth was strong with this one. Eventually I got the bus in shape for its maiden voyage with me as captain. I was proud I got through it. Among the unlabeled controls was a broken fuel gauge and worn seatbelt buckle. Despite me writing up the fuel gauge, it was never fixed. With a broken fuel gauge and my route far from the yard, I requested and was granted the ability to fuel more often. After cleaning my bus inside and outside, I was tired, but I managed to perform a dry run of the route in my personal vehicle as I was unable to get authorization to use the route bus for that purpose, my first day on route. Wow, this was rough. The route as written was confusing and outdated. The route is based on passengers' needs, such as what stop is approved, and if anyone shows up at that stop this semester. Kids change grades, and move from one district to another, so routes can get outdated from time to time. I ended up waiting several minutes at stops with no passengers. Kids didn't recognize me, and when I stopped for seemingly no reason, they laughed. I finally broke the ice and asked the kids if anyone boards the school bus at this location. Most didn't know. Some of the older kids helped out, as they knew of friends also riding the bus or not. As I recall, I had 2 schools to drop off at. There was a particular stop that was by far the most crowded, and my people counter, all shiny and chrome, came in handy. Between all the shirts, cleaning supplies, people counter, and pens, it all added up to an expensive start. Thankfully I had reserves. There was nothing great about the great financial collapse. Even though I had tried my best to clean the bus, the kids still had some crap to say about how old and smelly the bus was. I felt bad I hadn't purchased any fragrance because we as drivers were trained not to wear cologne or heavy smells as it could set off special needs kids. My passengers did not appear to be special needs, so I did go ahead and purchase a cleaner with a fragrance from the dollar store to appease the passengers. I sprayed and wiped again and again to see if I could quiet the voices and calm the riders. It seemed to work, as kids the next day didn't complain. Some even said it smelled better. It was a learning curve and a bit liberating being on the freeway in a bus and a newly cleaned windshield could see out of. I went off to the dollar store again for some anti-seize spray as my door was not opening and closing properly. When I said this was a mechanically challenged bus, I wasn't kidding. Learning about my passengers. In the beginning I was worried about my route, staying on schedule, cleaning the bus, and driving safely. Student crossings were at first difficult as I was trained on newer equipment that worked. I had to make adjustments with this equipment as it operated differently and didn't always work well. Kids, defiant and loud, didn't want to listen sometimes. The heat in the bus and lack of air conditioning didn't help either. What a way to make a living. I continued adapting and following my training. Occasionally rude comments from kids, parents, and impatient motorists would ruin my day. But I pressed on. Graffiti. At some point pupil management came into play as the older kids would pick on the younger kids. This became clear after I reminded kids constantly to remain seated before and while the bus is moving until we either get to school or to the appropriate stop. Kids tend to be loud, impatient, and defiant. The worst began when a particular adolescent decided to use markers to graffiti the back of the bus seats and a younger pupil. Bus drivers' main focus is driving, eyes on the road, defensive driving, not keeping an eye out for mischievous kids riding on the bus or on each other. So here we go, kids will always test your limits, and it's a simple plan to report it to the school and dispatch through incident reports. Time-consuming and a bit confrontational things got sorted and kids that didn't behave while on the bus didn't get to ride. It's that simple. We were once regaled with a tale of a pile of weapons found hidden in the seat back of a school bus. This may have prevented an attack on a rival gang at school. The bus driver's discovery may have helped save lives. Stowaways are also not uncommon, as kids may be curious, where does the bus go after it leaves school? That's why always checking for sleeping children or forgotten items after each stop is a vital routine check. What I learned: humans, prior to mental maturity, can and will test boundaries to see if they can get away with it. It may be the only time in their lives when they can get away with it, without handcuffs. Chapter 4, Time to Dance. Parents are naturally protective of their kids, almost to the point of being blind to the faults and errors children commit in violation of bus rules and school rules. That doesn't stop children of all ages from testing limits, being defiant, and getting into trouble. The issue is that we as school bus drivers have one priority: safe driving. While bus monitors are nice to have, cutbacks will almost be permanent, leaving the driver alone with a bus load of hooligans. From stupid questions, to graffiti, to fighting, kids have a short attention span, and I often count the minutes until every passenger gets the heck off my bus. Seriously, most bus drivers have the same thoughts day in and out. They may not admit it, but it often crosses our mind. General challenges faced in the job included but not limited to some kind of mechanical issue with the bus, from low coolant, low oil, broken seatbelt buckle, wipers that didn't work, a defroster that straight up stank of dead skunk, electrical issue with the two air fans that were held on with zip ties and black duct tape. I worked hard to get those repairs addressed. The cherry on top came when I was driving, almost done with my morning route to the school. The kids started yelling. I wasn't aware of an issue until green coolant was reaching my gas pedal on a stop. As I'm driving, I told the kids not to worry, I'll clean it up, and to be careful when walking over and exiting the bus via the step well. So I had a coolant leak into the bus via a broken hose pushing coolant into the aisle walkway. This was a new mechanical low point for the bus. I went to the back of the bus to check on the coolant tank that I verified was full before I left the yard, and of course it was now empty. I called dispatch. It was an hour before I got a mechanic armed with only a 5-gallon jug and a replacement hose. I made it back to the yard, and grabbed a mop while repairs were being made and coolant refilled. What a way to make a living. One of our drivers was no longer with us, and I had been picking up more than my usual load of passengers, 3 schools for the morning route. However, to keep the peace, I found that buying a broom for sweeping the bus so I didn't have to fight for it at the yard. Buying my own paper towels and an occasional bag of candy for the kids as a treat kept the peace both at the yard and en route. I hadn't got the music radio working yet. I was lucky the radio to dispatch was still working. The dog incident. In bus driving, Murphy's Law rules: whatever can go wrong, will go wrong. It appeared to be a normal morning, but boy was I wrong. It's not every day a pit bull chases kids into the bus. What do you get when you mix the class clown, a bat, a pit bull with new puppies to protect in school bus? Yeah, it was that kind of morning. For me, it was a quick trip to the school nurse, some bandages, and off to write an incident report. Oh joy! Dispatch was itching for lamb to sacrifice to the higher-ups. They came up empty when I got cleared in writing. The culprit lost riding privileges for a week. Only a week. See what I mean about leniency? Kumbaya. I was able to meet several drivers within our school district. We got to hang out a lot, while waiting for the kids to get out of school. We spoke of many things. It was an interesting nostalgia trip, and I made new friends. Good stuff. Summer school was forgettable. Hot summer days. This time I was getting used to the small bus. I hated it. When I was driving the transit bus, it was easier, fewer blind spots, no double parking, or risk of mirrors getting broken. Tight yards, poorly stacked, and vinyl seats on a hot summer day with no air conditioning was the definition of torture. The route was easy. I hated this assignment, but among the cruelty of cheap company tactics of split shifts, with no pay waiting for the afternoon shift, and little to no supplies for drivers like brooms or paper towels, the unionization journey was taking its toll on the drivers, including me. The heat can bring out the worst in people, even high school boys ready for a fist fight with each other. I really didn't want to get in the middle of a fight, but they didn't go through with it, so there was that. Still, this job was getting a little rough. After summer school was over, I picked up a job shuttling passengers. That was fun, and I seriously considered jumping ship over to transit work. But I couldn't forget how painful that metal seat was under my butt. I now knew why drivers carried around seat cushions. I thought, 8 hours of this? I had second thoughts about picking up strangers driving a public transit route. Same split shift tactics, hours all over the place. I wasn't feeling it. The concert assignment was sweet though, but that was the end of a fun assignment, or so I thought. What I learned: there's a big world out there, go experience it for yourself. Chapter 5, Fall semester came and I thought I had seen it all. One knucklehead after another, the drama of unionization, some drivers for, some drivers against, meeting after meeting of back and forth arguing came to a head. Bus driving cliques abound. Think high school drama but with buses and yard tribes. Supplies suddenly became scarce now that the union transition was underway. The great financial collapse was in full swing. The company required us to wear an apron, safety glasses, and gloves when fueling, but only supplied a dirty pair of gloves that became one glove, and that one glove eventually disappeared as well. Long story short, this was a contributing factor leading to an altercation. I seriously considered the long commute each way to work and found a job closer to home at higher pay. This time I would be driving a transit charter bus and eligible to receive tips as well. I was in the charter bus experience. Driving old dilapidated school buses with no air conditioning was getting old, fast. Low pay and split shifts didn't help either. What came next was a wonderful change. No longer would I be required to buy my own shirts, no union dues, no fighting over brooms, motor oil, washing my own bus, buying paper towels, cleaner, and making small repairs to a dilapidated old bus. The charter bus company paid me $2 more an hour, had a dedicated employee to maintain the buses. Motor oil, water, air conditioning, smelled nice, came with lavatories, DVD players, stereos, and its primary clientele was well-behaved private school kids complete with a chaperone. What more could I ask for? Assignment mostly consisted of sporting events, football, basketball, volleyball, track, field trips, the occasional casino trip with juicy cash tips, and then came the best assignment of all, the concert assignment. I thought I wouldn't get this assignment again, but alas, that experience came in handy as I was able to onboard a few other drivers for the summer assignment rush. It was easy work, not many pick-up or drop-off locations, lots of paid downtime to eat, read or otherwise catch up on paperwork or a nap. If I so chose, I could get into the shows for free, with advance notice. What a great deal! The inner city can be a congested place to drive, but I was learning the highway system as well. This came in handy when I had guests or on personal outings. Learning the ropes of bus driving was an experience, but I still remained focused on safety. Of all the assignments I've had, I missed the concert assignment. It was simple, fun, and I was amused by the occasional jovial passenger. Don't get me wrong, operational security and constant vigilance was a job requirement, but you get used to the rhythm eventually and it becomes second nature. Charter work became more and more involved as I went from one new assignment to the next. Some days were good, some bad, as I was often in challenging situations as a school bus driver I wasn't prepared for, but this was a learning experience and an adventure. Naturally, the competitive nature of drivers both new and old has its drama. This plays into assignments and management. When I was driving school buses, field trips made for extra cash to help out, but charter work was more varied and catered to a more discerning clientele with disposable income. So expectations ran higher. I compensated by spending lots of time studying for assignments, planning safe routes, using my phone as a GPS device, printing out stacks of routes and maps to make my life easier. I often would come home tired. Eat and need to prepare for the next trip by researching the destination. No longer was I focused on dilapidated equipment, but making sure I knew where I was going, as staying on schedule was important along with safety being first. Destinations ranged from several private schools, sporting events, theme parks, churches, faraway camps, the idiosyncrasies and challenges of each pickup and drop-off location, Big Bear, casino locations, black tie events, swap meets, airports, conventions, and yes, the concert assignment. The farthest adventure I had was several states away to pick up a bus to be refurbished. The snow-capped hills and beautiful scenery was a great diversion from the slow mundane winter season. Beats the hell out of putting chains on a bus and off-roading into and out of a winter camp in the snow. Yep, been there, done that. Despite how challenging bus driving can be, some companies I knew to stay away from as they tend to run you ragged. Done with one trip, here's another, no rest. Got 16 hours of on-duty time? You're working 14. No thank you, that's how accidents happen. Management always wants to hear yes, but every driver is required to be fit for duty and he or she needs to know and judge their comfort zone. Charter bus driving is a feast or famine business where the bulk of the money is made during the summer months. Assignments are abundant, but sleep isn't. Dual assignments in one day aren't impossible. It just takes more planning and passengers need to take their belongings in between drops. Triple assignments are not uncommon, but tend to be one-way trips best used to route limited vehicle and driver resources among company assignments. Drivers don't usually like those, but at some companies it's common. Planning is vital, lots can go wrong and management will always blame the driver at the drop of a hat. What I learned, don't take it personal, it's just business. Chapter 6, Accidents happen. When the volume of work escalates, the odds of an accident increase. All part of the territory the more you drive, especially on tight streets in city traffic, or odd spots not designed for 45-footers. That's why studying your route and the terrain along the route is important. Learning to drive a 45-foot bus was a new challenge, as the turning radius is longer than 40-foot buses. This is most apparent in the congested city making turns. Some streets don't even allow 45-foot buses. It's important to look out for posted streets. But alas, I did feel like a big boy driving the 45-foot buses, as you can carry 55 adults. Post-game humidity in the bus can be an issue for the air conditioning system as all the perspiration at once can overwhelm the system. That's when the defroster comes in handy, especially at night. Never drive blind. So many memories as I supported my passengers' team against rival school teams. A little hard-earned swagger never hurts. Supporting my passengers was a reoccurring theme, and created trust, respect, and a sense of adventure. Not so easy was watching casino passengers get on board happy to gamble, but not so much on the way home. At home I kept over a foot high of maps and directions. Routes for trips, hours, and assignments would vary, so being prepared and leveraging previous research helped keep me prepared. Memorable trips. I really enjoyed certain assignments, the scenic hills and view from an elevation made for picturesque scenery and photography. Of the select few times I didn't feel like I was at work, this was one of them. The noisy concrete jungle of traffic and pollution gets tiresome, and this assignment was a nice diversion. I took the 45-footer and I felt like a boss carving the gradual incline on a scenic drive. With pull-outs, slow drivers such as myself are considerate enough to use them, and if selectively chosen, can be a picture-perfect moment to gaze upon the scenic views on a clear day. Website creation. I was in charge of building and maintaining the company website and social media presence. So I did my best to capture those moments to help the company. Automating the quote system was of key importance as we got many calls per day asking the same questions regarding name, address, pick-up, drop-off, time, and location, so I built a form to capture that data. Managing a bus yard can be time-consuming, with all the maintenance, logging, payroll, DMV weight stickers, plates, inspections, fueling, cleaning, parts and labor. It's not for the faint of heart, picking up and shuttling runners to an event. That sure was an early assignment. Weather conditions were often cold, dark and rainy in the early AM hours. The long line of shuttle buses was a sight to see. Lots of hurry up and wait going on there. Hordes of passengers. I always kept a trash can nearby in case someone had to hurl. Nerves, I guess. It never ceases to amaze me how the brain can fool the body into believing anything both good or bad, regardless of the actual state of affairs. Shuttling a well-known band to a major annual parade was a cool assignment, not without its perils, but cool nonetheless. The mountains are a bit treacherous, with scant cell reception, rough terrain in certain places. Still, Seeing all those students suited up ready to walk among all those floats and the aircraft flying overhead was memorable and patriotic. Picking up military personnel from one military base and delivering to another military base was a treat. So many guns and gear. It was a treat to drive through the base. Each building has its own markings, not unlike a collection of fraternities in a friendly rivalry to be the Alpha Group. The military equipment was fun to see, such as heavy equipment transportation, tanks and helicopters. The road is long and several graves mark the path to the base, driving high-tech elites to an employee function. I'm glad the air conditioning was working, as the bus kept jerking into first gear. The memories of driving older equipment brings a good laugh looking back. Shuttling church members to a black tie event to and from the venue provided some of the most interesting conversations. Various ethnicities, worldview, and people generally willing to engage in good conversation over a plethora of subjects. Likely the most engaging crowd I had the pleasure of driving around, meeting celebrities, just going for a walk in Redacted Hills and complimenting my bus driving skills at a retreat as I backed in. Yep, having over $100 in my wallet and giving it all to a van driver to shuttle my passengers up to a camp, as the 45-foot transit bus I was driving was designed for driving in the city. Being a kneeling bus, it was low to the ground, saggy airbags to boot, and not made for a rough service road, uneven terrain and hairpin turns uphill to camp. Certain buses have more ground clearance than city transit buses. I explained, citing safety concerns. Good thing I paid the van driver all the money in my wallet to shuttle my group and all their luggage up to camp. At the end of that day, I ended up with an apology. I was a good sport about it. I never got my money back, but I did get an apology. Someday we may find ourselves in judgment call situations. Remember your training, delivering track and field students to my old college. I met another driver there who was driving almost the same model bus, just a few years older than the one I was driving. We struck up a conversation and good company is always welcomed. It helps to pass the time while waiting for the group, delivering a group to camp at high elevation in the winter snow. Getting the right chains for buses is important as the ground clearance isn't the same as trucks. Truck chains are much thicker and weigh more. Still, I trained for 2 days to put on chains and got competent. Our trip went just fine, but I was nervous to say the least. The chains got hot on the way down below 4,000 feet, but I was smart enough to take it slow and use my lower gears, using the braking power of the engine, just like we learned in school bus driver school, to slow the bus down without burning up the brakes. Asbestos brakes are fire retardant, but not fireproof. They can and will most certainly degrade with overuse, get hot and possibly catch fire. Not on my watch. Graduation night at this redacted theme park was rough, a long night of eating and disrupting my circadian sleep pattern. The hours earned didn't make up for the lost sleep. It's hard to sleep in the back of the bus. Sure, you can take naps, but sleep? Not truly a comfortable night's rest. Old musky seats, countless passengers probably farted or worse, didn't really scream comfort to me. Every rose has its thorns. I had a recurring nightmare, my feet would press down on the brakes and the bus wouldn't stop. I'd wake up in a panic, the thought of rear-ending a vehicle gave me nightmares. On one particular occasion I was driving the 45-foot redacted bus, the swankiest bus in our fleet, on the road back from a game. I was humming along down the highway a few miles before the highway split. Some jerk in a sedan cut me off and brake-checked me hard. I was within a few feet of the car trying not to rear-end him or her. I was fuming. I let it go, but I kept my eyes peeled for the same sedan from that point on. I took it as a reminder to slow down. Traffic, the freeway going east after 3:30 p.m. is brutal. Just brutal. Bumper to bumper, even in the carpool lane with a traffic transponder subscription to the carpool lane, LOL. The tipsy passengers on the way back from the concert assignment. Our transit buses had air conditioning and a bumping sound system. Tips were weak, but people were funny. Most passengers came dressed to impress, you know the deal. Coming back, some crowds didn't want the party to end, and while liquor isn't allowed on the bus, some people came in tipsy. Passengers could bring aboard bags of who knows what to eat or drink at the concerts, and sometimes, they had leftover liquor, wink wink. I'd often find bags of empty liquor bottles or cans left behind for me to dispose of. Once I found a money wallet, no ID, I turned it in. The trash can came in handy a few times and saved me a few mopping sessions. Some petite passengers I was worried about may have had too much to drink. Some crowds wanted the lights off, music was loud and I was a smooth driver. Some people actually danced on the bus to the music on the way back. One lady even ran her fingers through my hair as I was driving. I reminded her to remain behind the limit line. The marijuana enthusiasts rally supporting recreational use of marijuana, before it was legalized. Funny thing is, I picked them up from a facility not designed to encourage this type of enthusiasm. That was a challenging group. Drivers often get drug tested. It's disturbing to learn when you're the only one on the list: a trip to the winery, tourists, overhead compartments and leaking wine bottles. You can guess the rest. Wow, that was a clean-up, both in smell and in color. Good thing I always carried a crate with cleaning supplies just in case. Vomit, boogers, liquids, trash, gum, wrappers, dust, oil, you name it. Sooner or later, as a bus driver on the road, cleaning will be required from time to time. I remember how corny it was to have those bus rules up there for everyone to read, but they save the driver or bus cleaner from unnecessary work. I still remember giving each group of passengers the bus rules speech before every trip. It took 30 days to break that habit. Different clientele, keeping my front windshield inside and outside clean made all the difference to me. A clean windshield not only helps me see, but calms me down. Lag time between identifying, deciding and reacting to a problem down the road is very important. Buses don't stop on a dime. Charter bus drivers should carry a few things with them when driving a bus, such as clipboard, pen, accident kit, cleaning supplies, passenger step, phone, first aid kit, trash can, trash bags, rags, snacks, and if going into snow, light chains. I always mapped out my trips ahead of time and printed the route, to, from and along the destinations and groups I would pick up. Satellite imagery helped me determine location, pick up, drop off, site details, overhang, dangers, and so forth. I marveled at the 2-foot stack of routes and maps I had on the kitchen counter every night. I ran my inkjet printer ragged, mapping everything out. But it was worth it. I almost never got lost. Passengers take it for granted that bus drivers know where they are going and are aware of detours, change in plans and cancellations. It's a good practice to verify with the group leader what the destination is prior to departure. This comes in handy especially for transporting team sports, as team and field availability is subject to change. Notorious is the trip that lands in your lap at the last minute. You may forget to verify the destination with the group leader and end up somewhere else. It's also good to really know your intrastate highway system, not get stuck in the carpool lane before an exit, and be able to navigate safely and within time tolerances. Watch out for low bridges, solar panels in parking lots, airports, tree lanes, posted streets with weight restrictions. Tight parking lots that fill up quickly, boxing your bus in the lot, steep driveways, cover your right-hand squeeze when making a right-hand turn, and square off your turns to avoid hitting other motorists. Check your tires often. Nails can turn into blowouts, and losing control of a bus on the highway is scary, as I've been told by other drivers. Last but certainly not least, get all the rest you can before you report for duty. Staying alert is vital and takes energy. Recharge and be ready to deploy accordingly. What I learned: life's an adventure, keep your wits about you and enjoy it safely. Chapter 7: The Funny Farm. Back in the day, I dedicated 1 year of my life applying for and testing for a correctional officer position. I was 3 classes into my Peace Office Security Training, POST certificate. I was president of my homeowners association. The house was free and clear of any encumbrances. In my early 30s I was in good shape. I became a bus driver, for the simple fact that as a correctional officer, you get a small raise for holding a CDL transporting prisoners. I wanted that state job, the status and pay that came with it. Alas, the state hiring freeze put an end to my state job dreams. I never thought 11 years later I'd finally get the chance to be a state employee. Oddly enough, it took 1 year and multiple in-person interviews before I got hired. I remember driving by this facility before. It had all the charm of an aged institution and security-focused facility. However, I was thankful for being employed. This time, I would be floating from one assignment to another, performing a handful of different jobs. Among them was driving a conventional bus. Thankfully, I was escorted by a chaperone responsible for managing all passengers. For the most part, passengers wanted to socialize or listen to the radio on the bus. I didn't allow the radio on as the escort needed to talk to dispatch and keep count. The worst thing some passengers did was graffiti seats or eat on the bus. And leaving trash behind. I reminded myself to do your 8 and exit the gate. Initially, I was concerned I'd get jumped mid-extradition and the passengers would overpower the chaperone and myself, hijack the bus to freedom and I get blamed. I just remembered my school training, don't be a hero. Performing certain assignments comes with the potential for bodily harm and vigilance is a must. My classification was a varied job. Bus driving was only one of the jobs, a CDL Class B, was only the base requirement. Initially, I was terrified about driving through the populated section of the secure area that I faced challenges with certain colleagues that affected my experience. I was taught life is like a little fish in a big pond. As you outgrow one pond, you'll be put in a bigger pond, to repeat the process and grow. The atmosphere initially was positive, however, among other dangers inherent to physical labor, varying attitudes and personal agendas. This position had the very real potential to be dangerous. I noticed injuries were not uncommon. Different types of commercial vehicles, cold rain, triple-digit weather, we did it all. This was an interesting fork in my career to say the least. Ultimately, I got hurt and learned the hard way. Each classification of civil service is very specific, and accommodation isn't guaranteed. End of the road. When I set out to become a bus driver, I was fresh from reading a book about a writer who became a correctional officer and wrote about his experience. Along with watching 200 episodes of a popular prison TV series revealing the truth of life behind bars and getting into shape, I thought I was ready for anything. When I lost list eligibility to be a correctional officer due to the hiring freeze, I figured I'd either be earning or learning. The old 1-2 punch for any recession. I'm grateful for the defensive driver skill set I acquired becoming a bus driver. I learned how to be a better driver. I learned my state roadways, not all but most major roadways, a healthy respect for rules that save lives. Not just my own, but that of others. It became painfully clear to me how poorly compensated bus drivers are when I was a charter bus driver and found out where one of our fellow drivers lived. That's the reality of bus driver wages. Hours are few and varied, and climbing out of debt was near impossible for most. Generally speaking, employers can and will squeeze you for all you can give them. They don't care about your future or the well-being of your family. Bus drivers can have a rough exterior, that's a shield we use every day. As bus drivers, we tend to stick together and share information. It's how we survive. Not all information is sound or wise. Ultimately, it is the driver that makes the final call and lives with the consequences that often follow. Both good or bad. I noticed some bus drivers had bad teeth, and wondered why it was so. The original title of the book was Rotten Teeth, Empty Wallets, The Life and Times of a Bus Driver. However, the SEO may not help people find this book. Years later, I noticed drivers often spend most of their time in the bus, eating, sleeping and working from that bus, but oral hygiene isn't always a luxury afforded or priority made. Often we're lucky to get a pee break, poorly compensated, and stressed out living hand to mouth, often falling behind financially as our health declines. If you're a young bus driver, and you burn the candle at both ends and the middle and wind up in dispatch or management, You might be okay for a while. But for most, being a bus driver isn't a wise financial investment or a means to get rich. As bus drivers, tons of thoughts per day run through our mind as we process information, gauge distances, react to motorists and field pestering questions from entitled passengers, while we get our passengers safely to their destination. It's all part of the job, so next time you meet a bus driver, know, they are human, they matter, as the potential for a bus to be used as a weapon or a tool remains in the hands of the driver. Don't be afraid to grab your own luggage or gear and ask the driver where to put it if you don't know. Never block the aisle or stand past the limit line blocking a driver's view. Don't be in a rush to get to your destination, give yourself and the driver extra time for traffic delays and roadwork. It might save your life, that of others, and provide you both peace of mind. Pick up after yourselves. A never-ending flow of trash and forgotten items littering the bus is a constant challenge for bus drivers. Eat, drink, listen to music, dance and smoke outside, and poop away from the bus, it's that simple. You think I might be preachy, but it's all for the best that any posted bus rules be observed, for everyone's safety and sanity. Share the road, buses can't stop on a dime, they need lots of room to turn, don't cut them off because they're slow or stop at a railroad crossing. It's the law unless they are empty. If you see a student crossing, stop sign out, don't blast past them flipping the bird, seriously it's illegal and kids can get hurt. Be patient or avoid that street altogether if it's safe to do so. Parents, your kids are not little angels, they can lie or worse to get their way, it's childish, I know. Adults, keep the alcohol at home, don't bring it on the bus, and if you do, don't show it to the bus driver, he or she already has a job to do. Be cool, don't fight on the bus, police are just a phone call away. If you and your lover need a room, get one, don't do it on the bus. Be kind and courteous to the elderly and disabled. Respect the seasons of life. As bus drivers we see them all, thank you for listening to me ramble. I am a futurist at heart, someday buses will drive themselves and people won't think twice about how they get around. However, history will show how bus drivers manage to keep it together for their riders. I hope this book provided some insight into the life and times of a bus driver. We covered the school bus, charter bus, transit bus, and funny farm bus. The only bus I didn't cover was an articulated transit bus, but I never drove one, go figure. The open road is calling your name, when weather conditions are right, visibility is good, your vehicle is properly maintained, and you're healthy enough for an adventure. Get out there and see it all before it's all over. Share the road. Salute, disclaimer, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this memoir are my own and based on my personal experiences. The events and circumstances described are truthful to the best of my recollection, but certain names, identifying details, and locations have been altered or omitted to respect the privacy of individuals and organizations. This memoir is not intended to defame, disparage, or harm the reputation of any person, company, or institution mentioned, whether directly or indirectly. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The content shared is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered a reflection of any official policies or viewpoints of any entities referenced.